broadcasting from Park Avenue in New York City. Brought to you by Global Wealth Office at Nest Seekers International and Classique Moderne. This is Peace and Good Wealth. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Peace and Good Wealth. Today's guest is Rythum Singh, the heart and soul behind Darzi Studio. Rythum is more than just a designer. He's someone who sees style as storytelling, craftsmanship as connection, and spaces as soulful expressions of who we are. Whether he's designing a tailored look or a full environment, he brings thoughtfulness, presence, and a deep respect for beauty and identity. We're excited to get into his journey, his creative rituals, and how Darzi came to life as an extension of who he is. Welcome, Rythum.
Thank you, Lloyd, for the introduction. That was really sweet of you. I'm super excited to be here and chat about Darzi. It's been a passion project of mine. Started about 3 years ago, and I can't wait to explain it to you exactly how I started, where it's headed, and what we have in store next.
Perfect. So let's start with it. Let's start from the beginning. Where did this all begin for you? The passion for design. When did you realize design was your calling?
It was actually my parents. I mean, my dad's one of the most fashionable people that I know. Growing up, seeing him, going to the store, picking out items that he wanted to wear. He wears a turban in our religion. I'm Sikh, so he wears a lot of colorful ones, and he needs to find outfits that match that. So he just sort of, kind of sparked that in me. My mother as well, she studied fashion design, but she never really pursued it. Now she does as a passion, and, she has her like parties and her groups where she's like the voice of design, what to wear, and, who's dressing who's wearing what and whatnot. Family business has also been in fashion, but I was never really a part of it. Chats around dinner tables and things like that. I guess subconsciously it was always like fed into my mind. And 3 years ago I was like, you know what, let's take the leap. But I think growing up, I found confidence through fashion. I was a really quiet kid growing up, and I think fashion was one of the loudest forms of expression for me. So I decided to partake in it, and then it just sort of turned into this business that I have now. And it's great, man. I get to work with amazing people that sort of had similar journeys as I did, where they wanted to get into fashion and they didn't really necessarily know what to wear. They didn't have the influences that I had in my life, and I wanted to be that voice for them in the back of their head, saying, hey, you know what? This is how we're going to start your sartorial journey.
So it is basically your voice. It's a form of communication. It's a form of also identity. So let's talk a little bit about: is there a difference between cultures in the way we look at fashion?
Absolutely. I think, I think fashion is definitely a synonymous voice. I think, you can, from many parts of the world where you're from, you can wear the clothing that either represents the culture that you come from, or the country, or the region, or the temperature, or whatever it may be. But I think at the core of it, it does the same thing, right? It expresses who you are and how you feel and how you see yourself. But how you want to project yourself out into the world and how you step out of the house. I think, it's as simple as, you walk out of the house wearing a t-shirt and sweats, you're going to feel a certain type of way. Versus you walk out of the house wearing a suit, you'll feel a specific type of way.
Well, this is what I try to explain to people. We are, I think, the Western, America, I think I should say, because Europeans are different as well.
Yeah, very.
Right. We come out, of our apartments or our homes, etc., and we're wearing, sweats, or t-shirts, etc. In other cultures, there's a very defined way you go out and what you should look like.
Yeah.
And people expect that sort of a little bit more formality. And, when you're going, you shouldn't look like you're going to the gym if you're going out.
Absolutely.
And then, especially with Asian culture as well, I think there's always people looking at what, how you're dressed, and they gauge, your level of education, your level of sophistication based on, how you conduct yourself in public, and that includes fashion.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think, when it comes to America specifically, we tend to have this new trend that's like brewing up, especially in the younger generations, like athleisure, a little bit more relaxed, looser fitting clothing. But fashion wasn't always like that, right? That's a trend that happened maybe like the last like 5 years. The rest of the world is still catching up, but I think in America, what we really do have is we are like the central point of the world in a way. When we define culture, when we define these trends, the world usually does follow. I am not the one to follow that, just because I think that clothing, apart from just respecting yourself and how you wear and put yourself together, when you walk into a room, you don't want to walk into a room where everyone else is dressed and doing their part, and you're walking in with sweats or a t-shirt. It's how you command respect, but how you are also respectful to other people as well.
And also, I think fashion has a strange way of influencing how you feel. And then how you act as well. If you're dressed if you're dressed in a suit, you conduct yourself a certain way.
Absolutely.
Versus if you're wearing just casual clothes, right? So if you're walking into a meeting wearing casual clothes, that sort of like personality comes out. Whereas if you're walking into a meeting wearing a suit, that personality also comes out, right?
Absolutely. There was this one, this is many moons ago when I was living the corporate life, doing the 9 to 5. I was working at an ad tech company doing sales for them. And one of my mentors, he was my former boss and a really, really close friend of mine, this amazing British guy, always wore a 3-piece suit. And you're walking into a media agency and you see everyone there wearing a t-shirt, a hoodie, just casual clothing all together. And then you see this guy come in with his 3-piece suit, wearing, with his British accent and coming in, walking into a room and really commanding the space, right? And, he may not like to admit it, but I feel like that has gotten him so many deals. And that translated into me because I clearly saw that, he put himself together, not only just to go in and, like as a power move into the room, but more so to feel a little bit more powerful himself. Like you said, clothing makes you feel a specific type of way. And even when, the world shut down, we were into COVID, he'd still be the guy that would go on a Zoom call in a 3-piece suit. And it becomes sort of like a uniform. Right. You kind of reshift the mindset that you're in the clothing that you wear.
Right. Well, I have an uncle and I do the same thing, that even if I'm working at home, like during COVID, right, you're working from home and I would still get up, get dressed, take a shower, get dressed. Maybe it's not as formal as if I'm going to the office, but put on like, a decent pair of slacks and a dress shirt. Just go, to work, because mentally that changes. But there's also, especially in my field, I think, in your field as well, if you dress up properly, it also shows respect to the person that you're meeting. That you respect their time and who they are. You're not. I think sometimes when you're not properly dressed, it's almost like dismissing the value of meeting with them, etc.
Yeah, it's the effort that you put in, right?
Right. Now talk about Darzi. I think a lot of people don't know or may not know the definition of Darzi.
Yeah, Darzi is essentially a tailor in Indian culture. Anyone from any caste, from the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor, and when you look at India's history, there's a huge disparity between the two. But one thing that was common in between all of them and anyone and everyone was a Darzi. A Darzi is a tailor who you'd go and bring fabric to and say, hey, make me a kurta. Kurta is a really relaxed form of attire that we have in Indian culture, or make me a suit. Women will go to a Darzi and say, hey, I bought this beautiful fabric, make me a sari. Or a family member would be a Darzi. It'd either be a grandma or it'd be a grandfather that would sew the clothes for the entire family. And that's the reason why I wanted to name the brand Darzi, is because I wanted to bring that here to this culture where, we have this culture of buying from fast fashion or buying from these clothes from these brands that come up with these new trends and they dictate how the culture is going to be moved and things that we'd wear. But why isn't it the other way around, right? Like, why aren't we deciding what to wear and really putting thought into it? And like you're saying, right, you want to command respect into the room you go into, but you also want to respect yourself. You also have your own self-identity. And Darzi Studio is a way to do that. You come to me and, you don't have to necessarily bring the fabrics. I can take care of that. But you come in with a vision. You come in with an idea. You come in, with your personality, and we just stitch that together for you.
And it's interesting because that's the world I grew up in. So the world of bespoke and tailored things were not necessarily something that was unusual to me.
Yeah.
And I found it unusual that people thought that buying clothes from a department store was the more usual thing because if you look at our photos, family photos, like I'm wearing the same shirt as my dad because we bought the fabric, and my mom went to the tailor and said, okay, make a shirt for my husband and my kids, and everything was like that, and they would come up with based on what you would like and how you would like to look or how you would like it to fit, they would tailor, a dress or a suit or a gown, based on that. And the fabric also, you understood what fabric did because if you wanted it to be more formal or more elegant, you chose, different fabrics. Or if it's in the middle of the summer, you chose different fabrics and you chose the design and you chose the colors of all of that stuff. And somebody created this wonderful, bespoke piece, for you. Which is now I think fairly lost because now everyone just goes and the style back then, the style was something you created yourself, and now the style is something that you put together because the piece is already pre-done for you. So talk about your process a little bit. How do you begin the process when you're creating something?
Yeah, and it starts with a conversation, right? So, a client would reach out to me and say, hey, I've heard about you through a friend, or, I saw, your videos on Instagram or whatever it may be. However, they're able to find me. My first initial step is to have a conversation, hop on a phone call, hop on a Zoom call, or even invite them into the studio and just ask them outright, like, what is it that you're trying to accomplish here in terms of not like, what are you trying to buy or purchase from me, but more so, what is the goal? What event are you going to? What are you trying to dress up for? And get to know them a little bit better through conversation, their personalities, things that they're comfortable with. I can recommend, a suit to like 5 people, but not all 5 of them would be comfortable wearing that. So I think it has to start with understanding who is going to be wearing that item, and then just breaking down it from there. So asking, what are you comfortable with? What colors work for you? Getting a little information about the occasion, if it's a specific like wedding they're going to or a specific event that's coming up in life, breaking down those questions, and then selecting fabric. Once we decide the fabric, then we start selecting design. I like to do fabric before the design just because once you decide the fabric, then you narrow down the types of designs you can have. Not every design can fit into the various different fabrics that there are. So I start from that, and then once the design is complete, you've approved it, and you're completely satisfied, we then get into production. Once it's in production, it comes here to the States, and we basically do a fitting. Outright, you can take as many measurements as possible, and every Darzi, every tailor knows this. Not every single item is going to drape specifically on that person exactly the way they want it. So I think a fitting is very important. You kind of want to see how they feel comfortable wearing it, right? There's a set way of wearing it, whether it's a European cut, whether it's a British cut, whatever cut it is, it still needs to fit you the way you like it to fit. European cuts are slightly slimmer, but if you're a guy that doesn't like a slim cut around the waist, we want to give you the opportunity to open that up. We're not married to any specific cuts or silhouettes. We're married to what you want, and that is the truest form of a Darzi.
Right. Is there a time where a particular client comes in, they want a particular cut, and a particular look, and you're thinking this is not going.
Oh my God, so many times. Man.
So how do you very elegantly guide them to what would at least look a little bit better? Because I think part of that too is you're not just creating. For them, I guess anyone would be able to, to do so. But when they do wear it somewhere, right, it's your it's your reputation as well.
Absolutely.
And people might say, what's wrong with the person who did that for you, right? So how do you sort of finesse that, the sort of like what's something that a client would like that may not necessarily be the best for them, and what you feel would be right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a very it's a conversation that happens very often, and how to navigate that is essentially just you kind of build that rapport. They need to see the credibility in you, and one way I do that is I wear my goddamn best suit all the single time whenever I go into a meeting. So they know that, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to suits or any specific item that they're building. Then you honestly just have to kind of have that really blunt conversation with them, because I think, you know, they need to come to the fact that maybe that item that they want or that cut that they want might not fit them, you know, the way that they idealize in their mind, but then navigate them and push them towards something that you can, you know, persuade them into getting. So my goal is not to like just shut it down completely. My goal is to say, okay, hey, this is how this is going to fit on you based on the experience that I have. This is not going to drape accordingly the way you think in your mind, but this one will be. And I think it always starts with really just kind of having that gentle conversation and kind of not so, you know, hand-holding, but also just a partnership, right? Like you said, my reputation's on the line when they go wear it out. So they are my models, right? And that's how I treat them. Like, hey, you know, this is yours, but this is also mine. So we're gonna go on this journey together. So I need to be a part of it just as much as you do. And that's when they really just, you know, kind of understand that, hey, you know what, it's gonna be a fun experience. I'm gonna trust Rythum to do what he does best and go from there.
And what about the choice of fabric? You know, do you show them, you know, something that is in your inventory, or do they come in one day and say, okay, this is the fabric I really want to use, what can we do with them? And what happens if the pattern on the fabric doesn't necessarily match what they're trying to do?
Yeah, and you know, honestly, I really did wish that people came in with their own fabrics a lot more often than they do. It's not that I will push things that are in my inventory. I do show them the wide array of fabrics I do have, and they can select from it. But there's different challenges with each, right? One might be geographically located somewhere else, and it might not match the lead times that they have in mind. One's price point may be a lot higher than they anticipated. You know, one may, in their mind, thought, you know, was the right fabric, but it wasn't when they come into the studio. But not many clients come in with their own fabrics. I think there have been a few that have, and I thoroughly enjoy those conversations, because they're already coming in with a vision, with something that, you know, they already have in mind, and I have to kind of like break that down, and it's a different process for me. Versus when someone comes in and I'm helping them select fabrics, that conversation is entirely different, right? Because I'm not only showing them fabric, but also educating them on the fabrics that will work towards the event, or, you know, the end result of the item that they're trying to build.
So describe, you know, Darzi as a brand. What's the messaging behind Darzi? So that, you know, how does one, you know, there are a lot of people who are saying, look, you know, we could do bespoke tailoring for you.
Yeah.
You know, how you know, what defines you?
My goal with Darzi is to introduce people that there's another layer of customization and personalization they can get with their clothing. It doesn't just happen with you know, specific styles and silhouettes. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of brands out there doing bespoke suiting, but they're limited to just those products. For me, I think it's more so helping men and women start their sartorial journey, and it's really ties in with like a few essentials that you'll select. You know, you'll have a suit, you'll have a shirt, you'll have trousers, and then building upon that specific wardrobe and just making it truly their own, right? So it's not only just about fabric selection. It's not only about, you know, hey, this is what Darzi's offering is just a suit, or like, you know, a pair of trousers. It's more so understanding who they are, helping them, guiding them, educating them on how they can improve their current wardrobe, and just starting that sartorial journey into being more confident and comfortable in the clothing that they do wear.
And is Darzi generational Is there a specific demographic that you have right now, or are you looking to expand that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do have the demographic is usually honestly it's quite broad. You won't believe it. It's been all word of mouth. It's been people that know me or know of me, and they kind of tag the brand with like the way I dress and my style. And I think over the years that's something that's a tool that I've sharpened myself. I genuinely just like to dress up the way I would like. Wearing this pink T-shirt with this like mauve color like suit. Not everyone would assume that that's fashion, but for me this is, right. And I think I do a good job of articulating that pretty well, and kind of holding that credibility of like, hey, this is my style, but let's develop yours. So I think there's no set demographic. I think it definitely gears towards like, I want to say the people that are just starting their careers or just starting their independent life, outside of the home, outside of college, whatever it may be, and really just trying to they have a little bit more money in their pockets and they're trying to really up their fashion game. But I think the doors are open for anyone and everyone. I've designed clothing for like toddlers whose father suits that I've made. And then I've designed suits for fathers whose sons' suits that I've made that are my friends. So there's no set demographic. And anyone out there listening that wants to start this editorial journey, I mean, Darzi Studio's doors are wide open.
How about women? Are you looking to expand to women's wear as well, or maybe even women's suits?
Absolutely, man. I think that's a market that I'm missing. That's an area that I'm definitely missing. But I have started on. I think that the feedback that I've gotten from just chatting with the people that step into the studio, they'll walk in there with their partners, and the partners would say, "Hey, do you have this in women's, or like do you make women's blazers or suits?" It's not within my expertise just because I don't wear it, but I think it's an entirely wider like market that I definitely want to tap into. I think it's super fun. I think a lot of feminine cuts also can translate into a lot of masculine cuts that we do have, and to match them and pair them together, I think would be really, really fun.
And it's also, when Hillary Clinton, sort of introduced the world to the pantsuit, and Kamala Harris, was going around, you could see that women, especially women, who are executives of power, could wear very elegantly these suits. And also, I think, there could be some of the work that you have really intricate beading and stitch work, right? Yeah. So talk to us about that. How does that come about? How it's in Asian culture. I think that's something that we would see more often than in the Western culture. Yeah. But the beadwork, in a lot of ways, especially for formal wear, is super important. Yeah. And the stitch work is super important as well. So so talk to us about that process. How do you design in something like that, and what goes into it?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you touched upon this point. I mean, I think beadwork, embroidery, focusing on the stitching and the tapestry of specific like items and dresses and suits is very focal to South Asian culture, right? Like we're really, really good at that in that side of the world, and that's something that I wanted to showcase out to the modernization of what Darzi Studio is. Think of suit as like a blank canvas, and you build up on that. Obviously, not everyone stepping into the studio is looking to be that loud or to include that in their attire. But I love working with couples, and it's been mostly couples for their wedding, their big day, where they want to incorporate some sort of motif on that Western silhouette of a suit, of a tuxedo, of their bride's lehenga or sari or their dress. So there's been many times where we've actually taken pieces of the bride's outfit and incorporated it into the tuxedo, whether it's like adding trimming to the cuff, whether it's making the bow tie out of the beads, or simply putting the beads on there. There was this one couple that came in, they really were infatuated by Starlight, and we made this like Starlight tuxedo for them, where it was two separate tuxedos, but it was a piece of one, where one side was a Starlight on the left side for one of the gentlemen. For the other gentleman, it was on the right side. So when they stood together and they were taking a photograph, they're one piece. So beadwork works like that, right? It's sort of, it tells a story within itself. And I just use suits as a blank canvas to start on that.
Is that the craziest thing you've been asked to do, or are there? Well, what is the most? I mean, it's not outrageous. It's a term.
Yeah.
But different thing that you've done and where you've said, wow, this really ups the level of creativity.
Yeah, I think one of the most fun projects that I've ever had, growing up as a kid, watching James Bond and like watching like these secret agent movies, and every kid wants to be a secret agent when they grow up. There's a New York City detective, I won't say his name, obviously, who came in to the studio, and he was like, you know what, I love wearing suits, but I carry a lot of equipment on me. How do I sort of incorporate this into the outfit that I'm wearing? And I don't want to wear like a vest or like a belt because you want to be concealed and discreet. So I remember this. It was like, it was nighttime, oddly enough, and we were in like this dimly lit room, oddly enough. And we have laid out this fabric. It's a pattern of a suit that we were building. And he just like whips out his gun and he puts it on the table, and we're like outlining his like weapon and making like a holster in his suit. And then he takes out his handcuffs and all these little gadgets that, that he uses on a day in and day out. We're putting on the table and trying to figure out how we can make this suit as functional and discreet as possible. I think that was a really fun project because it was cool. It's like Inspector Gadget. You know?
Exactly. I was going to say, it's like Inspector Gadget there.
There's this movie by Jackie Chan that I used to be in love with called The Tuxedo. I don't know if you guys seen it, but it was like a smart tuxedo. So hopefully technology catches up and we can build something like that too.
Now, most of your clientele also, a lot of your clientele also are ultra high net worth, clients, right? For these, and we've seen how Indian weddings can be super, super luxurious.
Yeah.
Super, super expensive. So how do you make, your pieces both, for these private clientele, both feel very intimate, but also, accessible?
Yeah. Intimate for sure in terms of personalization. We can pretty much incorporate any sort of motif, any sort of signature touch that you'd want to on the item. However, when it comes to accessibility, I think it's a misconception that like suits are supposed to be like super expensive or suits are supposed to be, either you can go super cheap or you can go super expensive. I think it really starts with fabric selection and being educated on how to manipulate different fabrics to a different specific cut. However, there is a baseline quality that is there, and I think you either have to work your way up to it, or you really need to know what you're looking for when it comes to like the type of cut you want, the type of fabrics you want inside the suit. There's a lot of things that go inside a suit rather than just like the fabric on the outside layer. So there's ways to make it more accessible by, kind of trimming the fat out of the suit. So like, let's say for example, if a customer comes in, and usually the high net worth individuals that do know what goes in a suit is a full canvas suit. It's horsehair. There's a lot of different components and interlocking, interfacing that goes inside of a suit that needs to be there to retain the structure of it. So a customer that's looking for that, I already know right off the bat that customer is looking for longevity of that suit. Someone that is going to already take care of that suit. Someone that is already has multiple suits like that and can appreciate investing in an article like that. Whereas, there's customers that come in and that say, hey, you know what, I love this look, but I don't necessarily want to spend too much on it because I'm only going to wear it once or twice to this specific event. And there's ways to work around that, right? So we'll make a half canvas suit. We'll use less interlocking, or we'll make a fuse suit, which is the most affordable. We'll use like a blended wool fabric. Versus a 100% wool fabric. And there's ways to kind of manipulate that. Most of the customers that do come in pretty much, are ready to invest in a longevity, a durable suit. So I don't have to face that conversation too often, but there are times, and I don't want to say no, right? Because it's the first step. It's the introduction into the world of their sartorial journey.
What is the most common misconception about suits?
The most common misconception is that wool is a really thick fabric only for winter time or fall time. That is far, far, far from truth. There's really fine wool out there that can be used for spring and summer. And I think, as soon as, and it happens all the time when I say, hey, you want a 100% wool suit, the customer will be like, no, I'm going to wear this in the summer. And that's the most common misconception that I've heard in and out.
Now, and more also, I think more and more these days, if you go shopping for a suit, they all begin to look, the same. It's year after year. It's the same suit that's hung on in the stores.
Yeah.
What and color, especially color. Color is getting worse and worse and worse. I think it's become. It looks exactly the same color as it was last year, the year before that, and the year before that.
Yeah.
Whereas there are many different fabrics. So talk to us about let's do a little bit of a color education.
Yeah.
Depending on who's wearing it, right, and the cut and the fabric, there's certain colors that really stand out. What do you think are the colors that people should really be exploring a little bit more than just your basic black or charcoal gray, or, or blue?
Wall Street, yeah. I genuinely love to stay away from like the blacks, the charcoal grays, and the navies. Although navy, I would say like every shade of blue is probably one of my favorite colors. I am really into pastels. I think a muter pastel color that is still colorful but it's not too loud, right? Is one of my favorites. Perry, the pink one that he wore to the event you guys hosted, I absolutely love that color. There is the green one that you wore was another example of a pastel one. And this mauve one is another example of it. I think this is a really easy way to incorporate different colors into your wardrobe without being so loud. When it comes to like even this pink shirt, it's a very muted pink. It's a very pastel pink versus when you say, hey, you should wear a pink shirt. People will think like really loud or hot pink or something that's like in your face. But there's so many different variations of it, and this is where fabric comes into play. You can use muted fabric that doesn't really have the consistency of a lot of shine, which is always helpful to incorporate a little bit color. So I would say definitely pastels, but this is not color, but it's pattern. I think experimenting with patterns in a suit, not many people do, and they're really afraid of because they don't know how it's going to look. But I think a pinstripe has always looked good, and it's always going to look good on anyone and everyone that wears it. A Glen plaid, which is basically really 5 layers of small stripes with 1 large stripe going across. And that is a really royal suit. We actually have one in like the arsenal called like the Glen Royal. That's probably one of my favorite suits. It's actually synonymous with like royalty. Prince Charles used to wear it all the time, and it's one of my favorites. So colors and patterns are definitely a way to kind of experiment and get out of the original like black, blues and grays.
What about fashion sort of like fads, right? So people talk about lapels, number of buttons, how short or how long it is, whether it's single breasted or double breasted. I mean, is that something that we should really be concerned about, or is it more like, look, it's how you look and how you feel in a suit?
The latter. It's how you look and how you feel. There's so many times someone comes in and says, hey, no, a double breast will not look good on me. That is far from truth. A double breast will look good on anyone and everyone. You just have to cut it right. You just have to choose the right fabric. You just have to choose the right lapel size. There are certain principles that you should still follow, right? Like if your frame is on the smaller side, you shouldn't go for extra large lapels. It'll just look off proportionately. So what we like to do is we'll take your measurements and we'll basically proportionate everything. We'll make sure that the button's placed where you're in accordance to where your waist is and how large your waist is, how small your waist is. We'll take the lapels and make sure that it's in accordance to the neck size, to the chest size. And I think you still need to follow those principles in order to really, make a really good fitting suit. But I think those fads can go away. Like a double breast is not meant for older, older people and older generation. I think it's one of the most modern suits out there. This is a double breast, and I think it's one of my favorite cuts. Some ways you mentioned this before, how you walk into a store looking for a suit, or looking for a dress shirt. Not much has changed, right? You still have your 6-button double breast. You still have your 2-button single breast. How we like to kind of manipulate that and how we like to innovate on that is changing that, right? Like this is a double breast, but it's only a 2-button with a single buttonhole. And I'm wearing it like open as a single breast. So changing a few aspects of a suit and innovating on that is another way to kind of modernize it and, open it to a wider array of people.
So currently, fashion. We'll do a rapid, 3, question here.
Oh man.
No, what's just in and out? Obviously it changes every single time. But
Yeah.
French cuffs and cufflinks, in or out?
French cuffs and cufflinks. For me, I don't wear tuxedos that often. For me, out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ties.
Out. I cannot wear a tie.
How about dress shirts or t-shirts?
I would say a nice knitted like crew neck would look really good. I think it's right in the middle of like informal and formal, and like this is. I think that'll do the trick. I opt for on the day in and day out because I'm always on the go and on the move for t-shirts. But I have seen dress shirts work. Those won't go away anytime soon.
Pocket squares? No pocket
100%.
squares?
I love pocket squares.
Okay.
They're probably my favorite. Minus today, I should have worn one, but pocket squares is a really, really fun way to get creative with the suit and add a nice pop of designer color.
So what's next? What's next for Darzi? What's next for you? Where do you want to take the brand from here?
I want to get as many people involved in this journey as possible, and right now it's just been men, but I would love for women to join the journey as well. I want to start a ready-to-wear collection where it's a capsule wardrobe that is built initially for me, because that's how I've like kind of grown with the brand and envisioned the brand and introduce that to people, right? And these would be essentials where you can kind of mix and match the different outfits that are included. Let's say, for example, there's 10. There's no right number in my mind just yet, but let's say there's 10 to 12 outfits in that wardrobe. The entire use case of that wardrobe is that you can mix and match the different fabrics, the different styles, and make multiple permutations in different outfits with it.
Have different looks for the same, basically the same.
Exactly,
same
yeah.
products and
You
materials,
hand me your
yeah.
credit card and I'll charge it just once a quarter.
Right. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Rythum Singh. That's it for us. Thanks for coming. And good luck to you and to Darzi.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for us in Peace and Good Wealth. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Perry. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you, Dieter. This is Lloyd Carlos wishing you peace and good wealth.